Yo, what's up? My name is Patrouski, and today I wanted to talk about whether I think they will add Gen 9 mechanics to PokeMMO or not. Now, don't worry, I don't think that they will be adding the Gen 9 region or Gen 9 Pokemon probably until like 2035. We're about a decade and a half away from that ever happening. However, Gen 9 mechanics and Gen 9 balancing changes might be closer than you think, and I think there's some real validity to their possibility of coming to the game. Now, if you aren't aware, Gen 9 did add a ton of different mechanical changes. We'll go ahead and talk about those, break them down one by one, but this is just my speculation. I don't have any sort of inside information with the devs. I'm just a veteran player who's been playing the game for around 9 years now, and I do have a decent understanding of the history and understanding of the devs' goals and perspective going into this, but I'm not a developer. I don't have any sort of inside information. I don't have any sort of inside connection with them. It's just my speculation. Also, something to keep in mind is that the Gen 9 PvP scene is still quite fresh. We're still figuring things out. There's still a lot of testing going on, so these things might not be concrete. Alright, but let's go ahead and get into the first mechanic change I wanted to talk about, and that is the hail/snow changes. So in Gen 9, they changed hail to be called snow, and they also added an actual benefit to it. Hail was the only weather that didn't have an active benefit increasing a stat or decreasing a type attack or something of the sort. So hail/snow now has a 1.5 times defense modifier. Sandstorm increases special defense 1.5 times. Rain decreases the attack of fire type moves, etc., etc. Sun decreases water type moves, etc., etc. But hail didn't have anything. Hail had no effect of the sort, so it was an objectively weaker weather a lot of times just due to that fact in totality. So hail got a huge buff just being able to have that extra stat line. Now, do I think that buff could be added to PokeMMO? Yes, absolutely. Now, the time frame of when it will be added, that's so unbelievably up in the air, I can't even begin. It could happen next month, it could happen 2 years from now. When the devs will prioritize when to actually work on or implement these sort of mechanical changes, I have no idea. That's going to be left not even to my speculation. You guys can speculate on that in the comments. But I do think that the hail buff has a serious possibility to be added to the game. If you aren't aware, there are a lot of Gen 8 mechanics in PokeMMO. It's not just a 5th gen and below game. A lot of Gen 8 movesets are in the game. A lot of Gen 8 PvP and balancing changes are in the game. The teleport buff is in the game, if you're not aware. That's why Chansey and stuff like that are super good. But we also don't have things like Regenerator Slowbro, so it's kind of weird. There's some things that are in PokeMMO, some things that aren't. It's a very, very, very unique Pokemon game. So whenever discussing balance, it is tough because you do have to understand the grand scope of what is PokeMMO and what isn't. Now, I personally think the hail buff could definitely come to PokeMMO. Ice types really struggle in PokeMMO the same way they struggle in most Pokemon games, but maybe even more because I think we lack a lot of the decent ice type Pokemon, and I think it'd be fantastic because I think most ice type Pokemon prior to like Gen 6 are pretty dog shit, and then even then they're obviously usually quite bad, usually objectively worse. One of the worst typings in the game. Everybody understands that, but I think this hail buff is just a perfectly balanced thing to give them a fighting chance. Now, number 2, the next thing I want to talk about is the Scald nerf. Now, this is a really crazy one. When this happened in Gen 9, everybody was really surprised. The Scald nerf is essentially removing Scald from every single Pokemon that new Scald, except for, I believe it was Volcanion, which obviously we don't have Volcanion in PokeMMO, so it doesn't matter. It's now like Volcanion's signature move, and that's insane. Taking away Scald from every water type, that is one of the biggest nerfs to bulky waters and just water types in general. Not being able to fish for that burn is insane. I think it makes sense because Scald was unbelievably absolutely broken. It's one of the strongest moves in all of Pokemon. Allows people to just fish for that burn for free, essentially. You don't really get punished a lot of the time for it, and it makes things really difficult to switch in. It's really frustrating. Now, this is not a PokeMMO problem. This is a, Gen 6 and above problem, but it's really frustrating to not be able to switch in something like Buzzwole into a water type move because you don't want to get burned, even though he has a proper typing to be able to switch into it. That kind of stuff is really frustrating. But do I think the Scald nerf will come to PokeMMO? I actually don't think it will, for a couple reasons, mainly because bulky waters aren't as good in PokeMMO. Look at Milotic, not really as good. The main bulky water that's really good is Rotom Wash, but that's a different case. That Pokemon is built different. But the Scald nerf won't come, I believe, mostly because taking away moves from Pokemon in an MMO format isn't really doable. That's where things get really complicated, and that's where you really upset people. Imagine being a casual player, or a large part of the player base, logging in one day and just seeing all of the comps you've made, all of the even just casual Pokemon you've made for your storylines no longer have access to that move that you either paid for or got access to. That's a really frustrating experience. Taking away moves from Pokemon in an MMO format is really dangerous. It's really hard to do, and you pretty much never want to do it unless something is absolutely broken. So because of those reasons, because PokeMMO is obviously an MMO format and it's a different type of game than traditional Pokemon, I don't think we will see the Scald nerf. Now, balance and change number 3 that I want to talk about is Quagsire and Gastrodon specifically getting access to spikes, and I believe Stealth Rocks and all sorts of different stuff. There's a lot of Pokemon that got access to spikes. It got a lot more spread and distribution. So we're going to essentially talk about that in a whole. You can probably see a full list online somewhere. I think that this very well could come to the game. I don't think it's a crazy buff, but it is important. Gastrodon's a really interesting Pokemon that I think very well could have spikes. Quagsire is a really interesting Pokemon that I think very well could have spikes. I think Garchomp also got access to spikes. That's a little bit more of a scary one since Garchomp is so good in PokeMMO. But even then, I don't think Garchomp getting access to spikes is going to make him more broken. I think it'll make Tank Garchomp more viable and a more practical option, I guess, over Starf Garchomp or Life Orb or Choice Band Garchomp for more than just surprise factor of Tank Garchomp. I think that would make it a more legitimate option. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think Garchomp could get spikes and not have it be absolutely broken for sure. So that's kind of a really simple one. I think spikes could definitely get higher distribution in PokeMMO. There's so many defoggers in PokeMMO. We have really high distribution with that, so I'm not super worried about it. I think spikes distribution could definitely be increased. Now, balancing change number 4 is a super interesting one. It is making Roost and Recover and pretty much every healing move, to my understanding, 5 PP. No longer will you have to deal with soft boil spams of Chansey or Roost spams of Golbat or Mandibuzz or whatever the Pokemon is. Getting rid of 16 PP healing moves is a really big deal. Making them down to 5 PP. 5 PP is really restricted on that move. It's very important to understand, but I think it's quite balanced still. I think that would be really interesting to see in PokeMMO. I would be super down for it. Why not? I don't know if we actually need it, to be totally honest. I do think that PokeMMO is not really a tank heavy, wall heavy Pokemon game. I think Stall is maybe one of the weakest archetypes in PokeMMO. If you've ever played any Pokemon game competitively, if you play Stall in Gen 9 with Toxapex, or Gen 8, Gen 8, if you played Stall in Gen 7, Gen 8, Gen 6 or whatever, and then you come to PokeMMO, you're going to be really amazed at how little Stall is played and how poorly it performs, in my personal opinion and from my personal experience. I think Stall is one of the weaker archetypes in PokeMMO for sure. I think even though the PP difference for Roost, Recover, Soft Boil, etc., could be added to PokeMMO, I don't know if they need to, but I wouldn't be opposed to it either. I think that one's kind of a maybe. That one's kind of a 50-50, kind of just depends on what the devs want to do. I don't see why not. I think it is a balanced change, even though it is quite strong. And even though we don't really have to worry about Stall too much in this game, in my opinion, I think we could definitely see it. Kind of just a 50-50. It's a coin flip, whatever the devs decide that day. Now, the 5th and final mechanical change that I wanted to talk about, and there's definitely some that I missed, and if you have more that you want to see me talk about, let me know in the comments down below, please. That would help out a ton. Also, like the video and subscribe if you've enjoyed your stay so far. Let's go ahead and talk about Terastilization. This is a quick one. I think there is a 0.000000001% chance they add Terastilization to PokeMMO. I think it's incredibly strong, incredibly broken. I think there's a really good chance it gets banned in singles right now as we're talking in Smokin on Showdown. So I don't even know if it'll last much longer in current competitive play. Terastilization is pretty insane. Obviously, being able to give any Pokemon any typing as an addition, adding stab and everything, and adding defensive utilities is pretty insane. Obviously, when everyone has it, no one has it. Kind of everyone has it. You have to kind of worry about that and think about that. It creates the issue with Terastilization, from my understanding, from my bit of testing and practice, and from what I've heard from the higher ups and better players in Gen 9, is that it adds too many infinite options. Team building in Pokemon is really interesting, and usually with team building, you want to be left with like 8 or so Pokemon, or some amount of Pokemon that your team like just loses to, or has a really hard time against. I shouldn't say just loses to, but has a really hard time against. Terastilization is going to continue to lower that number, but it'll also increase that number if someone wants to run some sort of weird Terastilization. So what happens is you end up going from 8 Pokemon to worry about to 40 Pokemon to worry about with like specific niche Terastilizations. And I think it just becomes a very, very scary game of team building and who has what. And sometimes you're just going to be left with, they have the right Terastilization, so I just lose, like, sort of situation. I never want that. I never want it to be a situation in Pokemon PvP where you feel like you just lost due to team building. Losing to team building is a frustrating thing. Obviously, team building is really important. The team building should be valued and team building should be rewarded, and you should win games from better team building, but not to this extent. I think Terastilization is an amplifier that takes it over the top and takes it too far, and makes it unbalanced from the team building perspective. So that's just my personal opinion on it, I guess, so far. Even though I think it's really fun and I actually really like it, because I think I'm a pretty decent team builder, especially in terms of creativity and challenging the metagame and everything. I really liked my Showdown experience so far, and I've really, really liked Terastilization. It's really, really fun, but if I'm going to be honest with myself, it's probably not balanced. So I do not think they will be adding Terastilization to PokeMMO. That is pretty much all the mechanics that I wanted to cover today. Hopefully this video wasn't too long and rambly. Hopefully you guys enjoyed to some extent. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, check out my streams here Monday through Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Discord link is down below if you want to join a really cool community and see what's up. Learn a lot about the game. There's a lot of resources in there. You could really just learn incredibly fast. If you're new to the game, it's pretty crazy to think that if you're new to the game, I do think that joining my Discord is probably one of the fastest ways to learn about it in as much holistically information you can. It's pretty insane. So I appreciate you guys watching. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Peace. Have a good one. Thanks for watching until the end of the video, and if your name is on this list, thank you again. I really appreciate you guys watching my content, and I really appreciate you going above and beyond and supporting my content via YouTube memberships, Twitch Primes, subs, etc., etc. Thank you guys once again, and just have a great day.